Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen. Appears I'm online. Alright, today I'd like to bring up a topic that most people kind of dance around. They really don't want to get into depth of the actual sorcery, practical, magical workings of what you can bend rules wise versus those you cannot. Now, a lot of people buy into the Harry Potter type sorcery. This is self evident on social media. This is due to living in a state of illusion, or I should say, delusion, a delusional state of mind where they believe it's actually real. This goes into a lot of aspects without actually doing your own research. So last night I was online and a sister of mine from the same path that I walk, she's been having a lot of issues lately on the fakes versus the reals, what's real, who's a real practitioners versus who's just there for attention. But also, on some states, she's looking to change a lot of things. Now, not really sure if it's about what's going on in her specific life or if it's something to do with the world. So I decided to do a video based off this, the laws of magical rules. Okay. Now you've got two different types of rules. You have man's law, okay, or the belief in a man's law. And then you have the magical laws, the rules that can be manipulated or changed in some form. Now, here's something that a lot of people don't realize. This can be classified and broken down into three sections. Okay. The first section is the applications of choice. Okay. Or I should say, enlightenment. Now, enlightenment can come in a few different forms through actual research and study and the applications of the practices of what you're studying. Or, number two, you can actually meditate, okay, and find that gnosis deep inside of yourself. Now, what's interesting here and what is to note here is that through enlightenment, you can actually find that gnosis. Gnosis means hidden in Hermeneutics, okay, the Kabbalah and such like that. Now, this aspect, enlightenment is through the knowledge, the wisdom. You have to have understanding. Okay, to have understanding, you must have wisdom. To have wisdom, you have to have knowledge. Okay, so these three applications, these three simple applications, allows you to gain access to certain information. Okay, that would most likely be out of your depth, your reach. All right. Now, in this case, we're going to talk about these three applications. But then we're going to go into the second application, which is the actual study and practice. Okay. Through the knowledge and the understanding of that knowledge, gaining that wisdom of experience. And your third is the application of actually applying it to your life and what can be bent and what cannot be bent. Okay, from a law point of view. Now, the first, as I stated, the three main ingredients in wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. How do you gain wisdom? Through your own personal experiences, correct? Now, here's the second. How do you gain understanding? by doing the work. Now, how do you gain knowledge? By reading, by studying, by practicing what you're studying, what you're researching. Okay? And a lot of people have a lot of magical connotions about what is right and what is wrong. For an example, a lot of people, especially in the Wiccan and pagan community, deal with the threefold law. Now, the threefold law didn't exist before 1974. It is just another rule or set of rules or guidelines to keep people in check. Now, I'm going to use an example here. Okay. Lately, there has been a lot of information being passed around about Donald Trump. A lot of people, when he was running for office, said that they were going to leave the country if he became president. Now, I can't speak for him, but if I was him, I would have looked at these people and said, have fun. Get out. Doors are closed. Don't let the door hit you in the ass. But let's talk about the voting procedures. Do you think you have an actual, how should I say this, an actual choice on who becomes president? 500 years ago, do you really think the people had a choice on who their next king was? The answer is no. You may have a whole new guideline from man's law stating that you have a choice, that you can vote. This is why they register you. But does anything actually change? The answer is no. It is the same old, same old. Democrats vote for Democrats. Representatives vote for representatives. And nothing changes. It always stays the same. Anton Szandor LaVey stated this quite well. He said, and I quote, "It is the same old product wrapped up in a pretty new bow." Plain and simple. However, this is where wisdom comes in. Enlightenment. Pull that veil back and you're going to see this. Second of all, now you have understanding that your choices are out of your hands. Okay? Now here's the third fact, knowledge. Now that you have that knowledge, what do you do? Sorcery is a prime example of this. As a dark sorcerer, I can manipulate certain things. I can put things in motion, gain better luck, better influences, a better foothold. But does it mean I can have complete control over it? That's a no. There are things that we can change. We can eliminate enemies through curses, hexcraft. We can bring financial gain to a point. Okay? To a point. Now, this is where it gets interesting. We know that alchemy and herbalism are methods that we can utilize to attract certain elements, such as earthly goods, such as, say, for Commonwealth, monetary gain. I proved this a while back, a few months ago, when I put together a grist bag full of rosemary, thyme, basil, sea salt, and most importantly, one other ingredient. Okay? and it got me employment within 4 days of its making. If someone who follows me on Facebook utilized that video, put it together, and within 1 week, his profit had changed from a mere 300 to 400 to almost $800. Okay, so you see where you can manipulate certain things to your benefit. But again, do you have the overall control over it? The answer is no. Now, I could sit there and do a spell stating that I want all the gold in Fort Knox. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. I may get maybe 1 or 2 bars of that gold, but that's about it. It's the same thing when you vote for a new president. It is the same thing when you go to apply for a job. Most people put together a resume, but a lot of people don't understand or have the wisdom to put only that experience, which will get you that job. What is the job that you're applying for? Okay. If you're going for warehousing or custodian, okay, and you've had, odd and end jobs throughout the last 20 years, from being a custodial to being a warehouse employee to working for, like, say, FedEx Ground or UPS, even the United States Postal Service. Okay, these are experiences that will help you gain that job. But let's say, for example, you got stuff outside of that. Let's say firefighting, police work, let's say military duty. Okay, can knowledge of how to disassemble and assemble a rifle in 30, let's say 10 seconds, okay, get you that job of, say, warehouse worker? The answer is no. It's a prime example right there. Okay, so you have to learn to view the world for what it really is. To quote the movie The Matrix, take the red pill, will show you how far the rabbit hole goes. Take the blue pill and you go back to sleep. You go to church. I've seen Christians pray for 6 months for a new job. I've seen them pray for a better job. I've seen them pray for a girlfriend, a wife, a family. I've seen them pray for a lot of different things, including forgiveness. But if they've actually noticed that if they got off their asses, filled out an application, and actually did the work, repeatedly gone in and kept their face fresh within the employer's minds, they would have got the job in a fraction of the time. The same rules apply to magic. They apply to sorcery. Okay, and this brings us to the second stage of this video, and that is the applications and the knowledge of the works. Okay, knowing that through alchemical changes, such as the 4 elements, the main primary elements of earth, water, fire, and air. Okay, we know that in firefighting, for an example, that fire needs 3 components: air, fuel, and some form of oxidant. Okay, oxidation, something that will fuel it, something that will manifest it. All right, now this here I drew pretty quick, So don't judge the circle. Normally it would be a perfect sphere. But the circle of empowerment, the triangle of evocation, the four elements. Okay. And again, that circle of power, that circle of empowerment in the center. This symbol is known as the symbol of alchemical process. Okay. Now, through alchemy, as an alchemist, we're able to break down components. We're able to understand the alchemical process of change, how to manipulate the energies, not only externally, but internally as well. External, internal. Okay? Now, to do this, you've got to learn how to identify these compounds, these energies, to form a relationship with them, to understand how they work and why they work the way they do. So this comes down to, again, a choice, a belief system or structure of does your vote actually count, or is it out of your hands? Okay. Again, number one, what did I say at the beginning of this video? You have, and I quote, does your vote actually matter? The answer is no. Well, not entirely, really. There are things that you can vote, but the winner has already been decided. Okay? The same thing is in magic. Now, through this symbol, not only can you call upon the four elemental spirits, such as, say, for an example, I don't know, let's go with Satan, Lucifer, Belial, and Leviathan, which are the most common, the most recent edition of the four crown princes of hell. Or you can go back to the sub-princes. Azrael, Raziel, Dagon, and Asmodee. Or Asmodeus, I should say. These four are the elementals. Orions, Paimon. Okay? You have Iraton and another that make up the four elementals of the airs. You know, the four elements, the four directions, the four cardinal directions. Okay? But here's the thing. Just because you have those 4 points, can you really begin the change? Not in a singularity, not in that solitary mode. The circle of empowerment is a way to channel that energy. And this is where we're going into not only the knowledge of each an individual symbol, but also to identify that change. We're getting ready to go into that knowledge, okay? That knowledge phase. The circle of empowerment, the triangle of evocation. In Christian views, it is known as the Trinitarian, the 3-in-1 Godhood, okay? Now we know that in most grimoires, the 3 top beings of the underworld would be Lucifer, Beelzebub, and Astaroth as being the top 3. Could these 3 be the 3 aspects of one God, or are they 3 separate entities? That would be like saying Jehovah, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. Okay? You have 3 different manifestations, 3 different beings of 3 different ranks: Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Lucifer, Beelzebub, Astaroth. Okay? Now, likewise, in the Red Book of Appen, we see another variance of these four heads: Samael, Lilith, Astaroth, and Nibiros. Okay? Instead of Leviathan, you have Nibiros. Now, why did they go with Nibiros and Lilith over Lucifer and Beelzebub, or Belial for that matter? The Red Book of Appen was written back in the 15th century. Well, technically between the 13th and 15th century. But here, the point is taken. The point is there. It is that alchemical change. If you do not change, you stay stagnant. You have to learn to manipulate things to your advantage. Instead of trying to go into a job interview and trying to go for the job and applying for that job, try selling yourself. Sell yourself. It is the same thing within an infernal pact, a blood pact, a demonic pact, a dark pact. Okay? It is the exact same alchemical process. Now, calling on the three heads, you're bringing them to manifestation within the alchemical process, within the geometric shape of the square, the perfect sphere. You can look at it in a threefold direction, or you can look at it in a sixfold. Now, what do I mean by sixfold sphere? Okay. Four sides, 1 and 2 on the bottom, which makes 6. Six-sided cube. Okay. Now we're getting into hermeneutics. Now we're getting into the Kabbalistic attributes. Instead of singular, we're going into 3D. And again, the very center. Everything has a reason. Everything has a geometric shape, and everything has something that you can use to manipulate matter, be it from a earthly plane, a multi-plane, multi-dimensional, universal, or multiverse. Everything has a code. Everything has a method, a natural law. The law of attraction versus the law of what? The law of no attraction. Okay? Action versus reaction. Okay? Same rules apply. You have to learn the material. You have to learn what you can do as a practitioner. It is not about the world that you're trying to change. It is your unique world that you're trying to change to better, to make better. When your clients come to you, they expect some form of results. But how much can you apply if they are not honest with you? Okay? And again, we're getting right back to these laws, these basic laws, okay, of like and dislike. Okay? If you're going to do a working to change your life, learn the alchemical process. How can you change? By calling on yourself, your god or goddess, the spirits, the demons, the angels, the jinn. Okay, all these are applications that you can use. Look at the 7 forbidden arts. There's a reason why necromancy was considered the darkest of all arts. There was a reason why geometry was number 2. Chiromancy, number 6. Hydromancy, aeromancy, and pyromancy. Oops. Number 2, geomancy. Number 3, aeromancy. 4, hydromancy. 5, pyromancy. Okay? And those four are behind necromancy, chiromancy, spiritual conjuration, and spatulomancy, which is the study of bone structures, which comes in at number 7. Okay? So through alchemy, we can learn to break things down to their natural elements, such as how to identify basic energy patterns. Through herbalism, we can gain knowledge of what can heal, what can kill, what can make sick. But the big thing is when you learn to apply all of these together, and I mean all of them, only then can you get away from the biasness, the closed mindedness, and the limited point of view that the world sees. For an example, think of a horse with horse blinders. You only see what's in front of you. But when you remove those blinders, you could see in all directions. Open your senses. Start utilizing your senses and start getting sensitive to these spirits, these energies. Learn to identify them. Because only then can you begin to make changes within your world. And as the old story goes, you have to learn here before here. The individuals in this world buy into a form of slavery. Work hard and you're going to get places. Vote and we'll have a better country. They're told what to do, but nobody ever shows them how to do it. It's like saying that, for an example, church and state are separate, when in fact they're one and the same. It's just another form of control, another form of laws, another form of slavery. Plain and simple. But once you wake up to this fact, there's a reason why Satanists apply 2 simple rules: self-preservation, the self over anyone else, and the second, self-gratification. Anything that brings the individual pleasure is all, or satisfaction, is all good as long as it doesn't violate the self-preservation. Because anything that goes against the nature of the individual that would be classified as harmful or baneful is something a Satanist would not do. A Satanist would not do anything to hurt themselves, at least intentionally, because we all make mistakes. And that's one thing about sorcery, is that you're able to correct them. You're able to learn from them and adapt, grow, and mature. And this is why I always state that whatever you preach, always back it up with facts. Okay? Just from what I've mentioned so far, you can go into alchemy books and learn this stuff. You can go into herbalism, and a couple of the herbalists that I would recommend would be Paul Huzon, Raymond Buckland, and most of all, Scott Cunningham. These 3 men are spectacular. They put a lot of time and effort into their herbalism remedies, from Wicca in the Kitchen for Scott Cunningham to the Encyclopedia of Herbs and Herbalism by him, and the Complete Book of Witchcraft Raymond Buckland put at least 20 pages into his book just on herbalism, from medical uses to their names to the drawings of what they look like and what each and every single herb is capable of dealing with from an infliction. Okay? Paul Huzon, on the other hand, he kind of followed in a lot of in the footsteps of Scott Cunningham and made a book just on herbalism. And that is actually pretty cool because he actually came up with things that Scott Cunningham didn't put in his books, which is why I recommend these three as practitioners to look up. But you can also go into Remy's demonolatry. Okay? Even Scott Cunningham's discovery of witchcraft, because of the fact that these two individuals not only wrote about the herbs and the metals that were found on these accused witches, but also described what they were used for. Black, to kill. Kind of an amber color that makes ill, and a white powder that heals. Okay, so again, you're getting into the alchemical process and you're getting into herbalism. Okay, but once you get into the geometric shapes, why did they utilize a circle of empowerment? And not to be mistaken for a circle of protection, because the circle does not protect you. It is simply a portal to a nexus that empowers your magic. Okay? So again, you're getting into geometry. You're utilizing the method of fire and ice, which is Sumerian. They had the strongest steel, strongest shields, strongest swords, and that is because they mastered the alchemical process. Okay? Cornelius Agrippa, in his book, The Three Books of Occult Philosophy, literally came up with the elements in, chapter... I want to say it's chapter 18, if I remember correctly. It talks a lot about breaking down the elements. It talks a lot about how to break them down, but you have to pay close attention to what he's saying. If earth is both dry and cold, water is wet and moist, fire is hot and dry, air can be hot and cool. Okay? How do you do this within alchemical processing? It is through your basic understanding, your experiences. So again, it is about you, not about the world. Once you've learned to master yourself, once you've learned to master the energies from an internal and external viewpoint, then you can actually do it from an external point of view and start applying it to the world. So just because certain things are baneful or harmful to you right now doesn't mean that it's going to stay that way forever. You just have to experiment. And one of the books that I recommend that you get is called the Munich Manuscripts. It's actually known as the Munich Handbook today. And it's for the 15th century necromancer. Very good book. It's got a lot of different experiments in there that will get you started along your journey. Another good book is The Blood Sorcery Bible by Sorceress Cagliostro, the necromancer. Very, very good woman. I've had the opportunity to talk with her a couple of times. I've checked out her school and everything, and her works are very, very sound, especially in the magnetic point of view of blood sorcery. Applying all of these is very, very good and very, very potent. Now, another sister of mine that I've taken underneath my wing as my student, she came to me the other day and asked me, is it just me, or is the blacker the room, the more potent the magic? And I told her, the only thing I replied with was, no natural light. No natural light, just that of candle flame. When you learn to block out those things that are harmful, such as the belief structure of the normalities, okay, the populace, their belief systems, they begin to fear you. They begin to make up stories about you. They begin to hate you because you've stepped away from the normality. You've got away from the lies, the the negative contributions, okay, that will harm you in the long run. Hello, Angela and Dragon. Okay. Now, what's interesting here is, and by the way, Angela, I had a feeling you were going to be on, so I grabbed a coffee cup that I think you'd like. It's called Per Evil. We both know you've been posting a lot about the kitty lately, so, and it's good that the cat's doing a lot better. So I kind of thought ahead here. But anyways, you see how using your brain and actually thinking for yourself can actually benefit you in the long run. Because I can tell you right now that Angela here is currently smirking because I thought about the cup and had been paying attention to her posts. So it was that whole chain of reaction, cause and effect. Okay. Which goes along great with this video. So, anyways, as I was saying, once you learn to tear yourself away from the normality of culture, which is keeping you down, you begin to have that enlightenment, that it tends to awaken you and you start living for yourself. Okay. And a lot of people that get away from certain religious factions or cults that are brainwashed into believing that it is politically correct. Okay, it's the only way. It's the the only true way to enlightenment or into the heavens or the gods, which is not entirely true. Every faction out there has some form of, or I should say, piece of the puzzle, the proverbial puzzle. And that's why you have to step out of the coven setting and literally go into a solitary setting to learn and master all of these traditions, because of the fact that when you're in a coven setting, you only get to a small portion. You only get to see what they want you to see. It's like going between an apostolic church compared to a Pentecostal church. The Pentecostals are more down to earth. Okay. They're more about just, going along with emotions. Whereas the apostolics, on the other hand, are rowdy. They're literally in your face. They'll dance, around the sanctum. They'll scream, hoot, and holler. They'll cry, and I'm talking the men too, not just the women. They'll get up and go, hell yeah, yada yada yada, the whole king caboodle, and they'll run around the sanctuary. Okay, but even within these two factions, there are factions within factions, because each generation has their own idealism of what occultism is. And it's just based off what they've been told, what's been shared with them. Okay? And here's the thing, you go into Catholicism, you're considered a number. not an individual. Going to a Baptist church, you have a difference between a Baptist church and a Southern Baptist. Southern Baptists literally take shit to extremes. Okay, they will literally, even in the South, will threaten your life. Some people have actually been known to disappear because they've stepped on too many toes. Okay, and they just got written off as an unsolved case. I can tell you from my own personal experience down in the South that somebody actually threatened to make me disappear. Somebody actually threatened to burn down the house I lived in. Okay? Just because I was not a part of the good old boys group. Did it happen? No. Because I put up a magical barrier. I put up a circle of protection around the house, utilizing dragon's blood, myrrh, and frankincense, and calling on my Lord, my master, the one I serve. Okay? And I can tell you that with all their talk about being superior, Christians are nothing more than ordinary. They have no power whatsoever. And this is because of the fact that they believe in a lie. And this is what I said at the beginning of this video. Knowing the difference between reality and what is delusion. Okay? Now, believing in a delusion is all right. I mean, there's really nothing wrong with it. It is as long as you don't take it to extremes. It is like a child that believes in an imaginary friend. To an adult, it is an imaginary friend. But what if that 1% or even that 2% was an actual being coming in contact with you? Okay? And this is what people don't realize, is that sometimes you choose the gods that you work with or that you feel that connection with. Whereas on the other time, they reach out to you and let you know that they are there. Okay? I know this firsthand because when I was 5 years old, Lucifer came to me, not the other way around. I didn't understand at the time what that meant because I was just a kid. But imagine the shock by my mother when nobody's talked to me about him. I've never watched TV, never read books on him. But yet, when a 5-year-old turns to his guardian and asks, "Who's Lucifer?" Shit hits the fan. So again, it is the alchemical process. You learn to channel. You learn to harness the energies, to manipulate those energies, to gain contact, opening the gates, opening the doors. So in that symbol that I showed earlier, the circle inside the triangle, or I should say the square, would be classified as the gateway, the portal. In Norse mythology, it would be considered the 9 realms. Demonology, the 9 infernal gatekeepers. In voodooism, it would be Papa Legba, keeper of the gates. In the Necronomicon, you'll see another variation of it. So it all comes down to your perception of what you're willing to study and how far you're willing to go to find these changes and how to learn about them. Not only how to learn how they work, but how you can actually perform it and make that personal change in your own personal life. Okay? Like I said, I made that Grisgris bag. And I ended up with an extra $100. A friend of mine did it, and he ended up getting $300 to $400 extra. Okay? So again, just because you can do it doesn't mean you're going to get the amount that you want. It comes down to the percentage. What you put in is what you get out of it. And that is the truth. It is a true fact within any magical component, especially when you're dealing with supernatural and, should say, natural beings, such as Pan, the god of fertility in nature. Isis, the mother. Frey, the mystic woman in Norse mythology, known as the mother of all magic. Okay? So you see, everything has rules, everything has dimensions. Think of it from a superior god to the sub princes or demigods. You have the god, the junior gods, and then you have the demigods, and then you have all these other spiritual beings. But what if I told you that they are from different realms, different dimensions? What if I told you that they're not only from a universal manner, but also a multiverse? I can go into physics. I can go into um, a lot of different scientific things that have actually been proven today. But there's still so much the world doesn't know about sorcery compared to the normality. Okay? Chris, the world will have you believe that you have to live a certain way. But what if I told you that you have a choice and that you can get out of that and start making your own kingdom? What would you say? Would that be something that interests you? Or does it scare you enough that it'll make you run back to daddy, as in the church? Because let's face it, most people buy into the Judeo-Christian bullshit of lies, whereas very few actually have the courage to walk the path of a Satanist, a dark sorcerer, or sorceress, as Angela's path compared to mine. Now, her path is different from mine, and mine is different from hers, because I know that what I do works, just like she does with hers. Or even, say, for an example, the Aquarian dragon here, who I've recently begun talking with over the last few months. He comes from a long, long line of shamans, of natives. I'm only 25% native, but that explains where my spiritualism comes from. Okay? But his depth, very, very unique. But like both Angela and Aquarian Dragon, they're both self-motivated, just like me. So you see right there, we have commonality. But yet, our practices and methods are far from different. Whereas I go all out in my research and my studies, basically it becomes an obsession. Angela would take notes, for an example. Aquarian creates a grimoire of his experiences and constantly coming up with new. Okay? So all three of us have different methods of practice, while we all have commonalities, such as the left-hand path. And that's what I'm saying. Just because things are different doesn't mean it can't be manipulated. Just like things can't be changed in some various subtle ways. For an example, by listening, you understand where somebody is coming from. By seeing how they live their life. By seeing their deeds aligning with their words. by having that understanding of the path that they walk, be it religious or non religious, magical or non magical. There are laws that can be manipulated, changed. To quote The Matrix, it is not the spoon that bends, but you. It is your will, your desire that makes your spells, your incantations, your evocations work, your magic. Plain and simple. But on the other hand, if you lack that knowledge, if you lack that wisdom and that understanding, and you take in what you're told, that just makes you another sheep in the herd. Someone that can be toyed with, looked down upon, used. Now, if that's the way you want to be, so be it. But very few of us know that we were born for something greater. We were born to be more. Look at Friedrich Nietzsche, for an example, who said it best: mankind is something that needs to be surpassed. Whew. Imagine that. Mankind is something that needs to be surpassed. Sun Tzu wrote, "To know oneself is to know one's enemy, and to know one's enemy is to know one's self." Alistair Notch wrote something similar as well. To plan everything, to study your opponent, to know your opponent. You can lay out the groundwork so that it appears that you are psychic, that you see the future and what is to come, leaving your opponent wondering how you pulled it off. How did you defeat them? It is simple. You know your enemy. Because once you know your enemy and what they're capable of doing, then you can understand how far you're willing to take it. But more than anything, knowing who you are and what you're capable of doing will discern how far your enemy is willing to take it. Why do you think there's so much paranoia in the world today? Why do we need intelligence offices such as the CIA, the NSA, Homeland Security, or perhaps even, depending on which country you're in, one of theirs, French Secret Service, the KGB, for an example, the Russian intelligence. Okay, why do you need these? It's just to keep the paranoia going. That's all it is. Just keep it going, keep it going. Mistrust, misinformation. Keep the people scared as sheep to a flock of wolves, or a pack of wolves, I should say. And that's all it is. It is a system to keep you compliant. And like Neo from The Matrix, once you are disconnected, you become that individual, and therefore you become a threat. This is why very few people end up walking the path of a Satanist, because they can deal with the solitary, the loneliness, the hermit path, while being the Hierophant, the magician. Very few people. So you see, right there, only the strong will survive. You have to know yourself, learn what you're about, find out what you want, figure out what steps to take, and learn how to manipulate it to utilize it to your advantage. Doesn't matter what path you're on. Doesn't matter what the topic is. There is always, always a way around it. Plain and simple. So to learn the laws of what can be bent and what cannot, and how far you can actually take it, are three very different levels. But it all comes back to three things: wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. And the best way to do this is meditation. Meditation allows you to gain entry into the darkest pits of your own self. But not only that, but it opens up your chakras, your kundalini. You gain access to your katra, your spirit, your soul, your own consciousness. And you learn to rise between the seven realms of your own brain. The three aspects, depending if you're going from the front to the back or from the bottom, the base to the crown. Christopher Penziak has a great book for this, if you're interested in learning about your brain. It's called The Temple of Shamanic Witchcraft. Shamanic Witchcraft. Okay? The Temple of Shamanic Witchcraft by Christopher Penziak. And he gives some excellent visual stimuli exercises to go along with it. But he also gives a lot of knowledge. A lot of knowledge. And you have to really be patient and delve into these works, because with what he's doing in his works, he opens it up. He keeps it simple, but he also explains certain things. Much in the same way as Constantinos in the book of Nocturnal Witchcraft. He breaks down his own, where Constantinos actually breaks down his own rituals, his own methods. And when he talks about the equal-armed cross, he literally breaks it down so that it's easy for you to understand. Okay? So really take that into consideration. So you need to know what you're capable of doing. In the higher enlightenment that you come or get to, the more you're able to do. I had a guy at work back when I worked for Tractor Supply. For weeks, this guy tried every type of walking, from quiet walking to loud walking to stomping his feet to just basically walking normal, to try to sneak up on me. And I'd always call him out on his name without even turning my head, without even seeing him behind me. And he couldn't figure it out. How did I know he was behind me? How did I know it was him? It wasn't the fact that he had a small history of doing it. It was the fact that I used intuition. I used my third eye. And one of the big things, and I know that a friend of mine has been doing this all night, is tarot card readings. Cartomancy is a good way to plan things out. Okay? The more cards that you lay out in a spread, the more you have for information. It's not about how you laid out the spread, because you always go from the first card to the last. And when you do that, again, it comes down to how many cards you want to put out. Okay? If you do a simple 3-card read, you have a limited scope of information. Say, for an example, the Christian with the blinders on, or the horse with blinders. Okay? Compared to a practitioner who has stepped outside of the norm. You get a wider range. Same thing applies. Only difference is that each card represents anything from your issue to your question to your livelihood to your family views to who you are to your career and so forth as it expands. Okay? But it also comes down to the path that you're walking. Could Lucifer, for an example, the bearer of light, be shining his light on the path in front of you, path of enlightenment? Perhaps you're communing with him and you're getting that internal enlightenment, that sense of peace within yourself. Or perhaps you're dealing with an issue, such as a family coming at you, judging you because of your religion or your philosophical viewpoints, your path. Perhaps it's something to do with your job, your career. You see, it doesn't matter. Because when you get into cartomancy, and the more information, the more cards, the more information, you're going to see not only from a past point of view, like say a history, but you're going to see what's going on in the present, but also what the possible different outlooks for possibilities in the future, different paths, different roads, different thought forms of what could be based off your decisions today. Okay? Alchemy, herbalism, magic, mystical laws, it is the exact same thing. It is just another divining tool to find out what can be bent and what cannot be, what can be manipulated and what cannot be. Okay? One of the biggest things in my career as a black sorcerer, a dark sorcerer, a black magician, is that I've had so many people coming to me on both the Dark Sorcerer page and the Black Magician for Hire, mostly the Black Magician for Hire. They're wanting basically to cast a spell on somebody that they want to be with. Now, if they'd actually taken the time to realize that forcing somebody to love them against their will is a form of slavery, number one. But number two, it would be through mystical means or magical means. It would be like living with a zombie. You never know when they're going to eat your brains. Okay? But you see my point there. You cannot force somebody through mystical or magical means to love you. But you can manipulate the energies to bring the right person to you. Okay? And one of the ways you can do this is through Asmodeus. Asmodeus is known as the demon of wrath, but also known as the demon of desire, lust. Okay? He's a lustful demon. Even the book of Tobit literally explains how he wanted this woman so badly that he was willing to kill all her husbands, all 7 brothers. But it was the 7th brother that used divining tools. He conjured an angel, a superior being, that told him how to keep Asmodeus away. Okay? So you see, you can only go so far before you hit that boundary where it cannot be bent anymore. And that's the point of the laws. Physical law, you can get around. Criminals do it all the time. The guilty go free and the innocent get sent to jail. Okay, and over the last 15, 20 years, you've seen more and more people who are innocent that were found guilty and went to prison are suddenly coming out and they're getting books and they're getting interviews and counties are getting sued for slander and false conviction and such. But even though that's going on, in black magic, people come to a dark sorcerer, and because the law failed them, guess what? Black magic will seek out the individual responsible for that crime and eliminate them. Set, or Seth, for an example, the Egyptian devil, is the god of chaos. He's known as the god of storms. He's a temperamental god, which is similar to that of the Judeo-Christian god, the jealous god. Okay. Now, say for example, if we go into Ishtar or one of the others, say the god of justice, or let's go with Hecate, the goddess of justice. We see the scale, the feather versus the um, the gold. Okay. Now, how can the feather be as heavy as the gold? That's due to the iniquity. Okay, the iniquity of sin, guilt, and hatred. Okay, but at the same time, if your yoke is light, that scale becomes unbalanced, and the gold or the monetary gain is heavier. But let's say, for example, you've got so much guilt, so much hatred, so much rage that that scale goes the opposite direction, and that feather becomes heavier than the gold. Okay, same rules apply. Same rules apply. They can be manipulated. This is why apostolics tend to have everybody cry. Okay, you're not truly transformed unless you've bawled your eyes out in the middle of church at the altar. Okay, now in black magic, any Satanist will tell you, be it a traditional Satanist, a spiritual Satanist, a demonilator, that when you go into your altar room, talk to the gods, just like you and I are talking right now. Again, you're seeing that conversation, that two-way street. Be honest. A while back, Brian, my brother Brian and I were talking with this guy. He came to us and wanting black magic done on his ex-wife. Now, because she was taking his kids away and he did not want that. Now, we said that, yeah, we can do something about that. We can bring him back and, just kind of put the energy out there and have them come back so you can be a family again. Well, a few hours later, he basically claimed that his wife and kids were killed in a car crash, and he blamed us for it. Even though we tried explaining to him we hadn't done any rituals because we didn't have the supplies, and we clearly stated that up front, that we had to go out and get the supplies. They were needed. He still blamed us. Called us fakes, called us murderers, called us every name in the book. But then he made the mistake of stating that his wife and kids were still alive. Okay? That they were still married, they were still living together, the whole kit and caboodle. So right there, this is why the magic went back on him, was because of the fact that he kept things from us. Instead of being honest about a situation, he was trying to manipulate it to his best advantage because he wanted his kids to himself. Now, this doesn't go well because at this point, comes down to three wills: your will, your client's will, and most of all, the universal and multiverse will. Okay? Otherwise known as the will of the gods. Now, again, it comes down to laws that can be bent and things that cannot be bent. Okay? It comes down to fate. It comes down to destiny. It comes down to the order of protection, but at the same time, the order of destruction. Okay? Because he was dishonest, the universe stepped in. Okay? And he was made to look the fool. Basically, his wrongdoings were made public, and he ended up getting arrested in his own country because where he lived, the Witchcraft Act is still in effect. So that sucked to be him. But it's also fate. It is also destiny. So you see where some things can be bent and other things can't. Truth from fiction. Illusion from reality. It comes down to your perception, your understanding, your willpower. And that is what magical laws versus natural laws are about. There's always a harmony, there's always a balance. The scale is always balanced. Just because you're getting away with certain things on one hand doesn't mean that switch isn't going to be flipped and it's going to go to the other. During magic, you can do some stuff about it, whereas other times you have to rely on the other side. Jason Miller has a book called Reversal and Protection Magic. Well, actually, it's Protection and Reversal Magic by Jason Miller. And he works a lot with the Hecatean energies, the goddess Hecate. And he has a wheel called the Hecate's wheel. And we're all familiar with this wheel, those of us who've been in magic and for a long, long time. But he put a spin on it through an incantation dealing with the fates, the furies, and the gorgons. Okay? Now, what's interesting here is the gorgons will destroy, such as Medusa, turning men into stone with a simple glance. The furies seek justice, and the fates tend to heal. So right there, you got the threefold manifestation yet again. Interesting how that just came about, isn't it? And that's the thing about magic. That's the thing about laws. Rules can be broken, but they can also be manipulated. And then there are those rules that are in place for a reason, that even the gods themselves live by. Think of it as your own personal code of honor. There are things that you can forgive, for an example, whereas those things that you cannot forgive. For an example, there are different methods of betrayal. There are different types of attacks. You got those who will attack you daily just because they can. Those you can just wash off like water. Whereas the personal attacks are unforgivable, and you strike back. But what happens if no attack comes at all? It's like peace and war, or war and peace. Prime example is a book called War and Peace, which is right here, actually. War and Peace. Very good book. Touches on the dramas of the old days, but also... Wait a minute. There we go. But also touches upon the warfare, the subterfuge, and the manipulation. Okay? The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Good book. Very, very good book. And what's ironic about that book, and it's actually right here again, is The Art of War, hardcovered. It's got 3 different books in it. One is by a philosopher. One is by a general. And the other is by a prince. And each 3 of these authors have a different take on the art of war. Those of you who have studied your history, such as European history, dealing with the difference between the laws of the land versus the laws of the inner court of the king, of the palace. There are 2 different types of subterfuge. You have those that deal with the protection of the country, whereas they have no political views whatsoever on how to actually go about doing it. But then you have the inner sanctum, the court itself, where all matters are brought before the king and the himself. Okay, and you notice I said king, not king and queen. It is because 9 times out of 10, it is the king that makes the laws, makes the rules, makes the decisions. Whereas that 1% of the time, when the king was out of commission, that the queen stepped in because she was the queen at that point and she had her duties to perform. Okay? The same can be said with Satan and Lucifer. Okay? Or I should say, Samael and Lilith. Okay? Because they were the consorts of each other. The same aspects apply. Does Lilith have any say in how hell is run? Possibly. But in our world, how do you know? There's been stories about her throughout history, just like there is about Samael. The various different manifestations of Satan himself, from Satan, Lucifer, Samael, Moloch, Baal, Azazel, going all the way back to Shemyaza and Yokan. Okay? Or Yukon, I should say. Or you can go even further back and go into Ahazadaka. What's his name there? Dahaka. There it is. You can go into Dahaka, the prince of the evil one. Greek mythology. Interesting, because Greek is also associated around the arena in the old days as Sumerian, Akkadian belief systems, which is very, very interesting in itself. So again, you're seeing the differences in the laws, the difference between men and women, for an example, where most men will sit there and say, okay, we are one and the same. It's the equality aspect. Christian beliefs is that the man rules everything. The woman has to abide by her husband's ruling. If he says no, that's it, no argument. In Satanism, women have a vote. They have a right. They have a voice. Same exact applies. Rules, laws, regulations, all the same. It is that balance, the balance, where you're going to have the action and the reaction, the like and the dislike. And this actually goes back to the Scroll of Amram, which is one of the scrolls found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, where the sons of light, led by Michael, go up against the sons and daughters of darkness, led by Belial, Belial today. Okay? The same conflict is still there. So in reality, as Anton Szandor LaVey put it, yet again, it is the same thing wrapped up in a pretty new bow. So does things change? The answer is no. Most things do not change. But there are those things that you can change. There are those things that you can manipulate, those energies, those workings within the world that if you have the knowledge, you have the understanding, you can change it. And that is why things have slowly, over the last 1,000 years, begun to change. More so over the last 100 years. Okay? Or I should say the 150 years. Because of the fact that women can now vote. There are no slaves. Well, slaves are still there. They're just more a part of the populace. Okay? But it comes down to your viewpoint of what slavery is. Are you bound by those laws of the mundane? Or are you going to set yourself free and live free as the wolf, the predator? That is what it comes down to. Your personal choice within the laws of supernatural, magical, and physical laws. Plain and simple. Now, I can't speak for you, but I've already made my choice. And I live the life that I want, that I've chosen. I choose to live with magic. I choose to live my life as a sorcerer, not being bound or held down by adversities, divisions of the subcultures. Instead, I live my life free of dogma. And I rise within all sorceries because I choose to be about the magics. I choose to be about the knowledge, the wisdom, and the understanding of it. I wish to practice it, to study it, and to apply it to my own life and that of my clients. But again, I'm not you. Only you can discern how far you want to take it and what kind of practitioner you want to be. But that's up to you. All I can do is enlighten you. So with that said, that's been this video on laws, both magical laws versus mundane laws. Hope it's been educational. Hope it's been enlightening. Feel free to message me if you want. I'll reply. All right. The Stark Sorcerer is out.